Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on building national networks of engaged alumni. Thank you so much for stopping by today. My name is Emma O'Grady, and I'm the marketing coordinator at Capture Higher Ed. I'm going to be today's moderator for the presentation you'll be viewing. And before we get started, I just wanted to do a couple housekeeping items to go over with you all today. All attendees are in listen-only mode, which means you'll be muted during the presentation, but that does not mean you have to be quiet during the presentation. We would love if you ask any questions, and we will get those addressed at the very end. So if you see on your control panel at the very bottom, there's a chat log. Please feel free to submit anything you would like us to address later on. And I think that's about it. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our presenter today.
Thank you, Emma. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kevin Bauman. I am the Director of Philanthropic Initiatives here at Capture Higher Ed. I will second Emma's thank you for joining us this afternoon. Just a little bit more housekeeping. Know that we are really scheduled for about a half hour this afternoon. We know it is the end of the calendar year. Everyone's got the Giving Tuesday rush coming up. We want to make sure that we're being respectful of your time. So we'll be running about a half hour today. If that's what you expected, great. If that puts a half hour back in your day, we're happy to do that. So we just ask for your attention for the next half hour. Please submit questions as we go through today. Emma will be gathering those and supplying those at the end. So without further ado, let's jump into building national networks of engaged alumni. At a very high level, what we're going to talk about today is developing relationships that truly drive philanthropy. For a long time, annual giving channels have been focused on direct mail, online e-communications, and phone-a-thons that would generally be described as solicitations. Because of the cost of scaling those channels, oftentimes there was a solicitation involved in any outreach that we were doing. What we hope to show you today is technology that can allow you to engage visitors on your website. And because of its digital abilities, it can scale to deliver one-to-one messaging to help genuinely build relationships with alumni across the country. And those relationships then drive philanthropy, whether it be when you do deliver an e-communication or when you do deliver a piece of direct mail. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Many of you likely joined because you saw the statistic that 45% of visitors to an institution's website are visiting from out of state. And so if we talk a little bit about what out-of-state visitors look like online, we know that visitors from out of state are more likely to give than the average alum. And that generally holds true for online visitors in general. Specific to out-of-state alum, we know that their average gift is actually 60% higher than their in-state alumni. And that oftentimes can hold true for some general annual giving theory that's been out for a while in multi-channel solicitations. But just know that as we focus on return on investment, and as we're truly trying to move the needles on both donors and dollars, there is a large component of engaging out-of-state alumni that helps us to engage a much higher ROI. And then that third point I think is really important. Out-of-state alumni have averaged 7 visits in the last 12 months. And so unlike any other communication piece that we have alumni that are reaching out to us and engaging us in a very consistent manner. And the way that they're choosing to maintain their relationship with the institution is actually online. And I think that makes a lot of sense because an alum isn't going to write in to ask how the football game went yesterday, or an alum isn't going to make a phone call in to register for an event. An alum knows that all of that information is available online. And so they can simply log on their own time and develop their own relationship with the institution online. And that's where we're going to talk about today, is engaging the alum where they engage the institution online. It's important to note, I'll point out in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, that in large part what we're going to talk about today is annual giving and delivering the right message to the right person at the right time. But that also translates very well into major and planned gifts. And so pertinent to this conversation, it's actually interesting to note that visitors on the planned giving site, actually half of visitors researching a planned gift for an institution today live out of state. And so that presents some unique challenges to some of our counterparts in planned giving, which we've explored elsewhere. We would be happy to follow up with anyone that has those questions, but just know that the out-of-state challenge is not unique to annual giving or an alumni association environment. So as we talk about building actual relationships, we're going to ask you to do a mindset shift today. And so rather than thinking about your mindset or your website as a static environment where alumni are coming to digest information, think about your website as your newest communication channel that can make all other communication channels more successful. So we know that delivering meaningful messaging when alumni are actively engaged with the institution and making sure that that message is the right message at the right time can make alumni 44% more likely to stay connected. So 44% more likely to come back next week, 2 weeks from now, or next month. And we know that they will come back almost 30% sooner. And so that's the value of creating that relationship, is getting an alum who may have only previously made one visit, getting them to return, continue to digest information on the website, continue to draw closer to the institution. And so when the solicitation arrives, we then know that that alum is more likely to respond well to that solicitation. So let's talk about at a very high level how we're identifying alumni online and where they're going. So what we're going to talk about today are results from Capture Behavioral Engagement, which is marketing automation for higher education. We're hoping that today is informative for institutions who are at every spectrum of marketing automation. So if you have marketing automation on campus today, we're hoping that you see some of the strategies today and say we could really use that to engage our alumni. If you're considering marketing automation, we hope that you look at these strategies today and say, how do these incorporate with our existing solicitation calendar? And how can we best utilize this technology on campus? And if you're just learning about marketing automation for the first time, we welcome you to Marketing Automation for Higher Education, and we will add that you actually engage with marketing automation all the time. So when you're on Netflix and you've watched a series of scary movies, and the next time you log in, it recommends another scary movie for you to watch, that's because marketing automation has been monitoring your activity on Netflix website and then delivering meaningful messaging to get you to watch another movie. In the same way that Amazon is able to monitor activity on their website, and they're going to suggest that you buy the tea kettle that goes along with the teacups and the fancy British tea that you recently bought. They're able to monitor your activity and suggest meaningful engagement. Amazon and Netflix know that the more meaningful the engagement they can provide, the more likely you are to either purchase that cup of tea, or the more likely you are to continue to watch movies, find value in the relationship with Netflix, and thus continue your Netflix account. It's that same technology that we'll be talking about today that allows us to identify alumni on the institution's website and then deliver meaningful engagement to alumni based on where they're logging in from or their previous browsing behaviors. Now that's a 30,000-foot view of Capture Behavioral Engagement, and because this is not a commercial for Capture Behavioral Engagement, we would be happy to provide anyone with follow-up communications on exactly how the identification process works. But at a very high level, know that all of the messaging that you're going to see today is going to be possible because marketing automation identified alumni across an institution's entire website, and then once identified, we're able to deliver meaningful messaging pertinent to that individual alum. Now, what does meaningful messaging look like? Let's talk about a quick win as it relates to building national networks of engaged alumni. What you see on your screen today is Faux State College. That is Capture's demo institution where we can put up any messaging that we'd like. And you notice in the bottom right-hand corner a custom message inviting this user to President Huey's State of the University reception next week. Now, as it would happen, President Huey's State of the University reception next week is in Naples, Florida. And so this message is actually only being displayed to alumni visiting from Naples, Florida. As we go on, marketing automation makes it possible for us to then display a different message to alumni coming in from Phoenix, Arizona. And so with Faux State College, our basketball team is actually playing in Phoenix, or is actually playing next week as well. And our Phoenix Alumni Association is getting together at the Uptown Grill. And we want to make sure that alumni visiting the institution's website from Phoenix are fully aware of their opportunity to engage with the Alumni Association. And at the same time, we want to make sure that alumni in New York City know that we have an event on January the 15th to celebrate the new year with Faux State alumni who are all in the New York City area. So with those examples, you can start to see how marketing automation creates it possible to deliver meaningful messaging to alumni based on where they are across the country. What's the value of that meaningful messaging? Well, as we talk about relationships, I think it's really important that we focus on developing relationships that drive philanthropy. So it's the cycle of meaningful messaging. So the on-screen messaging inviting me as a New York City alum to the event on January 15th, which I then RSVP for, that encourages me to have a return visit because I enjoyed my initial visit on the institution site. So I return to then look at what the basketball score is and have meaningful messaging when I'm on the institution site again. And that generates an additional return visit. It's the cycle of meaningful messaging to return visits, meaningful messaging and return visits that builds a genuine relationship with alumni. And it's that genuine relationship which then correlates directly with an increased likelihood of giving this fiscal year. And so what you see on your screen is an actual chart of alumni participation rates based on the number of visits that they have online. So I'll ask you to look along the bottom and you can see the number of visits scaling from 1 to 12. And then you can see the corresponding participation rates. So if I have 1 visit online, my participation rate is 45%. Now I'll ask you to compare that to the division-wide annual participation rate of 11%. And so you'll notice that a single visit online makes an alum 4 times more likely to give. But if we can continue to deliver meaningful messaging to generate a second return visit, that alum's likelihood to give goes up even more. And if we continue to generate additional meaningful messaging to generate an additional return visit, and we get that alum to visit for the 3rd time, they are now 5 times more likely to give than the average alum. And so there is a direct correlation, which is exhibited by the linear regression that you see going through the middle of that chart. That is a mathematically drawn linear regression that correlates the relationship between online activity and likelihood to give. And so what you're going to see in the presentation today is an effort not necessarily to deliver a straight solicitation when an alum visits online, but an effort to deliver meaningful messaging and meaningful engagement that develops a relationship with an alum that drives philanthropy not only this year, but for years to come. And so you've seen great examples of the ability to deliver messaging while an alum is online. But if we talk about delivering a true experience for alum in New York City, or if we talk about a true experience for alum in Phoenix, Arizona, it's really important to note that marketing automation is really a series of online interventions that can either be digital or triggered follow-up communications. So in the examples you saw before, you remember that the Phoenix chapter is actually having a get-together at the Uptown Grill to watch the basketball game. And we were able to deliver that meaningful messaging when alum was engaged online. And to drive that messaging home, you'll notice that 48 hours later, an alum received the custom communication on the left-hand side of the screen that's custom addressed to that alum. It includes all of the necessary details to attend the basketball watch party. It asks the alum to click for full details, and it is custom signed by the Executive Director for Alumni Relations here at Faux State College. Now, all of that happened without the Executive Director having to click a single send button on an email. This information is delivered automatically based on rule sets that allow you to deliver the messaging either 48 or 72 hours after the alum is on the website to help generate that return visit. The same is true for what you see on the right-hand side of the screen, where President Huey is having his State of the University address in Naples, Florida. Alumni in that same area received a message from President Huey with a personal invitation to join him at the yacht club with full details and custom signed by President Huey. Now, both of these communications went out in a very timely fashion to create a very custom felt alumni engagement opportunity that helps to drive and build that relationship. So if you haven't noticed, we are talking a lot about relationships. And again, our goal is to develop meaningful messaging that encourages alumni to return organically, but it's also to deliver triggered follow-up communication that's going to generate that second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth visit that we know is going to make all of our communications more successful. So as we look at furthering the relationship, we can't drive this point home enough. So you'll see furthering the relationship, and we hope that you remember that statement because it really is about the relationship. And we'll talk in a minute about the payoff from the relationship we're building. But delivering messaging online is not just about the solicitation. It's about delivering information that makes alumni proud of the institution. In this case, our Faux State College of Business was rated #1 in the whole universe for return on investment, which is something that we know alumni across the country are going to be really excited about. So alumni who have registered for the event in Naples or may have registered for the event in Phoenix or New York City, they're receiving custom messaging based on their geography. But it's important to note that the ability also exists to deliver custom messaging based on individual points of affinity. So in this case, we know that alumni on the College of Business website are going to be very proud of the fact that we recently received this accolade, and we want to make sure that they're engaged with this messaging. And so delivering this message when, where, and how they're engaged with the institution online helps us to build philanthropic relationships that increase the likelihood of giving this year. So we hope you've gotten the point about building relationships. We cannot build enough relationships, and know that marketing automation is running 24/7, 365 in the background. So while you and I are sleeping, it's important to note that alumni on the West Coast may be engaging the institution, or alumni on the East Coast may be engaging the institution. And marketing automation is there to generate meaningful messaging, to deliver the right message at the right time, and continue to build on the number of online visits to increase the likelihood of giving this fiscal year. Now let's talk about when we build that relationship. So I'm going to ask everyone to look at the third visit, where an alum becomes 5 times more likely to give. Now I'm going to ask everyone to look at the sixth visit, where an alum becomes 6 times more likely to give. And envision delivering a solicitation at the point in the relationship when an alum is most likely to give. And so it's not necessarily just that we're delivering a calendar year-end solicitation. We're delivering solicitations that happen to be calendar year-end, but we're delivering it to an alum once a genuine relationship has been built. And what does that delivery look like? Well, with marketing automation, the solicitation can be delivered immediately on screen in real time when, where, and how an alum is engaged with the institution. So on that third visit or on that sixth visit, when an alum comes back to the institution's website, regardless of the fact if they're on the athletic site, on the College of Business site, or maybe they're on the Alumni Association site, their solicitation can be delivered to them at that exact moment where their relationship signifies that they have the highest likelihood of giving. And in this case, you'll notice the solicitation is very forthcoming. It is a calendar year-end solicitation, and we're engaging that alum on the institution's website in a meaningful way with a message that is related to their previous browsing behaviors. We would love to say that every alum who receives this solicitation then goes on to make a gift. Let's walk down the example that an alum does not make that gift. True marketing automation allows us to continue to deliver that solicitation, again, when, where, and how the alum is engaged online. So in this example, the alum goes to ESPN to maybe check up on a NBA team or check up on an NFL team, and that message, which you see in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, actually follows that alum where they are active across the internet. And the value there, again, is to deliver that solicitation when, where, and how the alum is engaged, but in the same way that we can further the relationship. So maybe it's that an alum is engaged on ESPN, and their message, if it's not the right time to solicit this alum, their message is actually the brag point about our recent accolade. And it says, click here to learn more. And then we're able to drive that third visit or that sixth visit, which then creates that genuine relationship. Now, we've talked a lot about that relationship and what it can mean for gifts this year. And I think it's important to note that if it sounds like we're investing a lot in relationships, the answer is we are. And the goal of investing in that relationship is actually to create the nationwide network of engaged alumni who give this year, next year, and for years to come. Now, you may have recently read the U.S. Trust Report that high net worth households actually give on average to 5 different nonprofits every year. And so it's important to know that it's the relationship that we're building today, and it's the relationship that we're building with this alum throughout their lifetime that's allowing us to compete for the philanthropic dollar with all of the different philanthropic messaging that our alumni are receiving from nonprofits across the country. And the value of developing that online relationship actually correlates directly to an increase in lifetime giving. So the chart that you see in front of you, it charts the average lifetime giving by an alum's online affinity. And by tracking the number of times that an alum visits online, the number of pages they visit, the amount of time that they spend online, marketing automation is able to create an actual current affinity score to prioritize the right relationships at the right time. In this case, we can use this online affinity score to chart lifetime giving. And as we continue to grow that relationship, we know that we are continuing to grow a relationship that increases average lifetime giving for each one of our alumni. So know that, yes, there is an investment that we are making in relationships, and know that, yes, this investment pays off not only this year, but for years to come. And as we talk about creating sustainable philanthropic programs, that's genuinely where we're going to start seeing the edge. So now that we've talked about how this looks as a national network of engaged alumni, I feel like we've really driven that topic home. Let's talk about another application and some actual results so you can see that these strategies work not only at a national level, but these strategies work here at home as well. What you see in front of you is an actual example of online engagement for one of our partners. I know there's a lot going on in that chart, and I'm going to ask you to look at the right-hand side of that chart where it says 12%. What you're looking at is the blue section is actually the alumni engagement that we found on January 2018 when we first turned on marketing automation for this partner. And we started paying attention to visitors reading their e-communications, visiting their website, and ultimately being engaged with the institution online. And so if I ask you to focus at the far right-hand corner of the chart and the blue shaded section, you'll notice that in January 2018, only 1% of alumni who had graduated since 2010 were actively engaged with the institution online. And when we noticed that, we were able to work with the partner to develop meaningful messaging that engages a younger audience. Now, in this case, the partner actually had a contestant, an alum who was a contestant on The Voice, and they were able to showcase that young alum and create messaging in the e-newsletter that engaged young alumni. And as we developed messaging that engaged young alumni, you can see that over the course of the next, 10 months, we were able to increase young alumni engagement from 1% to a full 12%. Now, what does engagement mean? Engagement means we were able to identify those alumni online, and we were able to build the exact relationships that we're talking about today. And the outcome of those relationships is that today, those 12% of young alumni who are engaged online average 10 visits, and 28% of those alumni gave in either fiscal year 18 or they have already given in fiscal year 19. And so not only are we able to build relationships with alumni in Phoenix and New York and Naples and Seattle and build genuine relationships that result in genuine philanthropy across the country, the same strategies hold true when it comes to engaging young alumni. The same strategies hold true when it comes to plan giving strategies, and the same strategies hold true when it comes to creating meaningful relationships with major gift prospects. Where it gets even more exciting is your website can become an active source for information for alumni who may have gotten lost. It can become an active source of information when we're planning new chapters. It can be an active source of updating alumni information. And so what you see on the right-hand corner of your screen is a message that can be displayed online, customized down to the individual need, but it allows alumni to fill in their information and update their information in real time when they're engaged with the institution online. And so no longer do we need to rely on an email hitting an alum's inbox at the right time and them clicking through and going to the website to update their information. We can simply display the message asking an alum to update their information while they're engaged on the athletics site or while they're engaged on the College of Business site. And at the point at which they're updating their information, we may be generating a new email address. We may be finding an alum who has been lost to the institution for the entire time. And so we're able to update information, identify lost alumni, and at the same time, we're able to plan new chapters and discover chapter leaders across the country. So I may be sitting in New York City with my institution trying to identify where we should start our next chapter. And marketing automation is giving me the opportunity to identify that Seattle, Washington has 100 alumni who are very active with the institution. We do not have a chapter in that location, and it just so happens that Emma O'Grady is our most active alum in that area, and we can reach out to her and ask her to take the lead on developing this chapter. So we can identify where our next chapter should be placed, and we can even develop relationships with alumni who are likely to become chapter leadership in that area. And that also holds true for prioritizing cities where we're going to have an event or where we're going to take the president. And a great example might be that if we are debating upon taking the president to Las Vegas, or we are debating on taking the president to Los Angeles, it may be that there are more alumni in Los Angeles, but it may be that the alumni in Las Vegas are actually more active. And so at the end of the day, when the president gets off the plane and walks over to the event, we want to make sure that alumni are active and engaged with that event, not simply in that city. And so great examples of how your website can start to give you information not only about building relationships and delivering solicitations, but about planning new chapters and expanding the database and discovering new leaders and prioritizing events. So as we come up on the half-hour mark, let's talk about a few takeaways from today. When it comes to messaging, and when you're deciding on how do we deliver the right message to that alum that may be hundreds of miles away, be intentional, be timely, and be relevant. Events are a great example of that. There's certainly a time component associated to the event on January 15th. There's certainly a relevancy that's associated with an event for alumni in New York City, but also be intentional on who you're delivering that message to. It may be that we want to engage high capacity alumni to come to that event. And so maybe your marketing automation is restricted to alumni who have a certain capacity score in the existing database. Be very intentional with your messaging. The second takeaway is to integrate marketing automation into existing solicitation channels. So two things to take away. Marketing automation should be included in the solicitation calendar in the same way that direct mail or phone-a-thon or any other channel that you're leveraging. It's really important that your marketing automation strategies mirror your existing messaging and they mirror your existing initiatives. But the benefit of that is you can start to use existing initiatives and make those even more successful. So we didn't invent the State of the University address for President Huey simply to have something to talk about on marketing automation. That event was already scheduled, but the fact that we had marketing automation meant that we could more effectively deliver that message and increase alumni at that event. So think about how marketing automation can integrate with existing solicitation channels and existing messaging. It's also very important to evaluate who is not reading current messaging and act on that information. So the example of young alumni who were not engaged with the institution was very, very relevant in creating messaging that then re-engaged young alumni. And it was the re-engagement of young alumni that allowed that institution to increase their engagement from 1% to 12%, and then develop meaningful relationships with those alumni that are paying off not only this year, but for years to come. And then the last would be to allow alumni to update their information in the moment. So by displaying the identification forms, allowing alumni to self-identify that, yes, I would like to receive more information on plan giving. Yes, I would like to receive the alumni newsletter. Or yes, I would like to register for this event. And displaying that message on every page of the website is really where marketing automation allows an advancement office to update information for their alumni in real time, when, where, and how alumni engage the institution in the moment. So with that, I'm going to bring Emma back. We're coming up on the half-hour mark, and I'm going to ask Emma to bring us any questions that may have been submitted along the way.
Yes, of course. Thank you so much, Kevin, for that. And now we're going to begin answering those questions that you have submitted during today's presentation. And just as a reminder, you can still submit questions. We have about 5 to 10 minutes worth of time left in this presentation. So please feel free to submit those at the question pane and the attendee control panel. So my first question that I have for you today, Kevin, and it refers back to the slide of applying the strategy young alumni. And that question is, are only young alumni online?
Sure. So I appreciate that question. And we did focus on young alumni, ironically, because they were not engaging with the institution online. And then we were able to re-engage that population. But if you do look over to the chart on the left, I think it's really important to note that in developing messaging that engaged young alumni, that didn't mean that older alumni simply stopped reading that messaging. We were actually able to increase engagement with older alumni as we continue to develop relevant messaging for that population and develop meaningful relationships with that population. It may be interesting to note that half of the alumni that Capture tracks online today actually graduated before 1985. And so there's a very large population of older alumni who are actively engaging the institution online. And so as we have conversations about plan giving, and as we have conversations about major gifts, it's really important to note that older alumni tend to have higher capacity, and that generally means that marketing automation is not only engaging populations that are distant with the university today to create annual giving opportunities, but we're identifying and tracking high capacity alumni or alumni on the plan giving page to provide meaningful leads for plan giving officers and major gift officers who might operate in the space with older alumni. So I'm thankful for that question. As it turns out, older alumni are actively engaged with the institution online. Our goal, though, is to identify any population that is not engaged with the institution online, develop relationships with those alumni, and then move the needle with both donors and dollars for years to come.
Okay, and so on to the next question. So as we talk about our strategies for engaging alumni, what determines if and when a relationship is built? And are those relationships only built online, or are they built offline through one-to-one connections, either on the phone or in person?
So I am really thankful for that question. It's going to take me just a minute to navigate back to our previous slide about relationships and when is the right time to reach out. And so as we start talking about visits and how that correlates directly to increased likelihood to give, there are other factors that are taken into account by affinity scoring. And so not only monitoring how often an alum comes back, but monitoring how many pages they visit, monitoring how long they spend on a specific site. and monitoring their activity over time allows us to better identify an overall affinity metric for that individual. And so as we talked about the Capture Affinity Index, and excuse me for navigating through a few different slides here, but as we talked about the Capture Affinity Index, you'll notice along the bottom that it's actually a score of 1 to 50, 51 to 74, and 75 plus. So we're able to develop an affinity score for each alum, and based on that affinity score, as an alum starts to get into the 51 to 74 range, we can then decide based on capacity, maybe this is the right time for a major gift officer to reach out to this individual, because we know they have high affinity, and we now know that they have high capacity. We should prioritize our relationship with alumni who have an affinity ranking in the 51 to 74 and certainly in the 75 plus. And so there's a lot of great applications for this technology in the annual giving space on when do we trigger the actual solicitation based on their activity online, but also when do we trigger personal communication from a development officer based on their aggregated affinity scores. I think it's also worthwhile noting that as we start talking about an alum's likelihood to give based on their relationship online, their likelihood to give is not restricted simply to their likelihood to give to an online solicitation. As we develop that relationship, their likelihood to give actually increases based on all solicitations. So it may be that we have a direct mail campaign that's going out and it's going to hit at the calendar year end, regardless of whether an institution has visited or whether an alum has visited once, twice, or 17 times. And so as we develop that relationship, it may be that they receive a mailer that just so happens to hit on their 5th visit. Well, that mailer is actually going to do better because we have developed that relationship, and that alum is more likely to return that mailer. And so the website becomes a communication piece that develops relationships that makes all other solicitation channels more successful. So I hope I'm answering your question. If not, please follow up with me after the presentation today.
Yes, okay. So just to be aware of time, I'm going to throw out one more question to Kevin, and then we will let everyone go. So last question that I have for the day is, in lieu of organized chapters, how can I, so this attendee is a gift officer at a small liberal arts college, build an active group of alumni in out-of-state territories?
Sure. So I love that question. So one of the benefits of marketing automation is as you're scheduling, as a gift officer, as you're scheduling your travel, it may be that you schedule your anchor appointment and you know that anchor appointment is in, I keep going back to Phoenix, but it's top of mind. So let's keep with our example of Phoenix, Arizona. Well, as it turns out, marketing automation may have already identified 10 additional, maybe moderate capacity alumni that live within 10 miles of that major gift prospect. And so while you're in Phoenix, Arizona, you can prioritize your outreach to those other 10 prospects who may be just down the road or certainly within driving distance. And it may be that you're able to schedule a visit with 3 or 4 of those based on timing. But you then open up the door to communicate with the additional 7 that you weren't able to schedule with. And you can also then put those 7 individuals into your portfolio and receive triggered communications. Marketing automation has the ability to trigger alerts to you based on your territory for alumni who are actively engaged online. And so you may set up an alert to say, anytime anyone in Phoenix, Arizona takes action on our website, I want to know immediately. And so I can start to see their individual points of affinity, and I can start to follow up personally with meaningful messaging. And so I think that's hopefully down the path of your question of how do I develop relationships in key strategic areas for the institution, maybe when I already have travel planned, or maybe to make that travel more successful.
Okay, well, it looks like we're getting to the top of the hour now, or I guess we can say the end of the hour. So anyone that has submitted a question today, please know that after this webinar, within 24 hours, we will be following up with you. And at this point in time, I'm going to let Kevin wrap it up. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Sure. And Emma, thank you for being a wonderful hostess. Thank you everyone for joining us for Building National Networks of Engaged Alumni. We hope you found value in what you saw today, and we genuinely hope that wherever you are in the spectrum of bringing marketing automation to campus, that you were able to take away some strategies from today or learn more about the capabilities of marketing automation. I will steer everyone, if you are having conversations on campus about marketing automation, I will steer everyone to Capture's blog, where you would find 6 questions to ask about marketing automation if you are considering it on campus. I certainly don't want to do a shameless plug for Capture Behavioral Engagement. All of the information you saw today certainly was relevant to the strategies that Capture has employed in the higher education space in marketing automation. But we would encourage you to start asking questions on campus if you aren't already. If you are asking questions on campus, we would love to be a meaningful resource to those conversations. So with that, I will simply say thank you. Please follow up with any questions that you may have after this presentation, and we'll be happy to send you a recording here in the next few days. So thank you again from all of us at Capture, and we wish you all the best for your calendar year-end solicitations.